Welcome to Fangoria's Colors of the Dark podcast. I am one of your hosts, Elric Kane, and joining me is Mrs. Rebekah McKendry. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I've had an exciting week of life.
Yeah, you've been back from Fantasia, and I'm sure you have lots of amazing stuff that you saw. I
Lots of movies.
unfortunately spent part of the week sick. So I didn't get to go to Fantasia because I tested positive for flu type A on the day we were supposed to get on the plane, and I was suddenly like, I can't, take everybody at Fantasia, whatever that is. So I ended up missing, but I made it to San Diego Comic-Con for a day, which was pretty cool. I still have to say, like, as far as days go, that was a fun one.
You'll enjoy to know in our last episode a couple weeks ago, we said that if anyone came up there, they should come up to us and say the words mind hunters based on our last conversation. And we had two guys
Two
two
mind
came right up to
hunters.
me together and they said mind hunters. And I was like, if only Bekah could be here to hear this. And we had one listener show up wearing the brand new Colors of the Dark t-shirt that I
He
haven't
sent
even
me
seen.
he sent me a picture on Instagram. I don't even have that shirt
It was
yet. Like
mind
I
blowing
saw,
that he could get one
yeah.
in America and still make it up to Canada and go to my premiere. That was pretty special. So shout out to
Oh,
him. And no, but quite a few listeners came up to us. People in line. Occasionally, I'd be in a line and somebody would turn and realizing somebody from people from Montreal. So it's always surprising when we go places. Once people maybe hear our voices, that when we hear from them, you'd be surprised at how great a feeling that is for us still, even after
oh my
a
gosh,
decade of
yes.
doing it. It's just nice because you don't really know outside of your friend group who's listening to your show.
And podcasting, it's such like you make a film, you show the film. Like I can go and see it playing somewhere. But when you're podcasting, it's literally like I ate a taco, I yelled at my kids to clean up their damn shit, and then I walk in here and start
Yeah.
doing this. Like it's a very um there's no fanfare. There's no like, and now it has aired. Like it's
And we're
just
the
not
only two
quite
people who know had listened. Like I know you were there
us.
and I was there. So outside of that, there's no guarantees. But
And
there's all sorts of people listening.
admittedly, we would be doing this even if people wouldn't listen because I love the fact that like we'll go have dinner and I'll suddenly be like midway through. I always get bowls of chili because we go to Barney's all the time, and I'll be like midway through and I'm like, this is literally the podcast. We're just talking about films outside of it. Like we do this regardless. So just the fact that people listen to it, I'm still tickled
I
by.
will
So
tell you
that's
this because you'll
awesome.
like this, and I'm not going to name drop it but I was talking to some people at the bar afterwards. So Fantasia has this great like tradition that afterwards there's this one bar, McKibby's, where everyone goes to afterwards. And I was talking to somebody I didn't know, and there's a woman across the table who heard, I guess, my name, and she just started saying, "Oh, you're from Colors Dark. I listened to every episode." And her partner or next to her turned and said, "Oh yeah, she's always playing that in the car." And I didn't catch their names or what they did. I just assumed they were people who'd gone to the festival that day. And when I got home that night and looked her up, let's just say 2 years ago, she won the Oscar for Best Film for producing. And
What?
yes, and so I'm not here to name drop. I just must say that it was a great situation where you realize somebody talking to you when you don't know who they are. It could be anyone because this is just somebody I assumed was a listener of the show, so she might be listening to this. So I'm not gonna, out anyone. But it was very cool to realize, oh, all sorts of people listen to our show. You never know.
Wow.
Very cool.
It's not just my mom. I
No,
love
but your
that.
mom's just as important.
She is important.
Yeah,
Thank you for
she
that.
is.
So she says hello.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know you have seen a ton of stuff. So because I was sick for a couple of days, I ended up reading. Like I binge graphic novels. I have a couple of new films, a new TV series, but mostly I binged a lot of graphic novels. And I did go see, you know what, I'll kick it off because it's brand new. I went to see Trap. And this one I tried to get Elric to come see, but I think you were like 8 hours off of a
Yeah.
plane. And I was like, come see Trap with
I'm
me. And you
dying to
were
see
like,
it. I really want to see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
You were like, I'm barely functional. And I was like, fine, I'm taking my kids. So I took Marnie to go
Hmm.
see Trap with me because it's PG-13. And I was like, it doesn't really seem to have anything in it. So fine. And it didn't. It was like the perfect kind of preteen gateway movie. I'm still kind of mixed at it because I find M. Night, I love him, hate him, if that makes sense. And I don't think I'm the only one where two-thirds of this movie I thought were amazing. I was in, I absolutely loved it. And then that final act kicked in with the twist, and I got so upset because it wasn't where I thought and wanted it to go. And I find that I have that same response to a lot of M. Night movies. I know we saw Old together, and I know that
Yeah.
we were both like that.
It's the
Yeah,
ones that set
like
up too clearly. There's too well set up, and they're relying on a great twist. Like his first film perfectly does it, perfectly stuck the landing, and probably created a very difficult kind of future path for him in some ways. But Signs
yeah.
doesn't have that. We talked about The Visit as being
Mm-mm.
one that it's not about the
This it's
twists. Yeah, they're
tight.
just
Yeah.
there's good twists in it, but it's not reliant on the twist. And I think
Yeah.
that's the difference. Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess you know what? Actually, The Visit is kind of reliant on a twist now that I think about it, but it worked.
yeah.
And this one, I was okay with the twist, but it was just kind of where it kept going. It was one of these films where I felt like, well, this should have ended a while ago. And it just seemed to keep going. Like it was escalating the situation in places that I wouldn't have necessarily done that. But that said, I didn't hate it. Like I still was super amused the entire time. And like I said, I thought the first 2/3 were incredibly fun. So I was talking with Phil, Fangoria editor today, and he was describing it as like, I didn't like it, 5 stars. And that's kind of how I felt. Like it was like, I walked away with complaints, with plot holes I could drive a truck through. But that said, in the moment, I was having fun watching it. And it wasn't until I walked away and started thinking like, but wait, how did they, but why would you do, but why would that character want to, and that's what I really started having hiccups with
Hmm.
it. So it was very much kind of don't think too hard about it. But that said, Josh Hartnett is one of these. Elric and I have had conversations about these people before that age in reverse, like they get sexier as they go older. So like preteen me watching Faculty, Josh Hartnett was by no means kind of like my heartthrob of the time period. He was just okay. But then he rolls out decades later in Penny Dreadful, and I was suddenly like, oh my gosh, Josh Hartnett. And now I'm like, wow, like he's getting hotter with
A
age.
lot of people
So good.
commented on that during Oppenheimer because he's got like a side role and he's so kind of manly now.
Yeah.
For me, it's Marissa Tomei. Said she gets hotter with age, and
Oh yeah.
just saying about her, I think these people are comfortable. It's good, nice to see.
Yeah. So with that, I do actually recommend seeing Trap. Don't go in, trying to pick apart the plot. You will be disappointed as soon as you start trying to poke holes in the logic of it, because yeah, you can do that. You can poke a lot of holes. I don't even know if this is one. I will always say you should see stuff in theater, but if you're kind of wavering, I don't know if this is one that you need to rush to the theater to see. It was not as theatrical as some of the other films that I've seen as of late.
Hmm.
But that said, it was still really amusing for an hour and a half, and my daughter really dug it. So yeah, so Trap.
Is Trap over Watcher, his daughter's film?
I think okay. I liked the setup for Watchers more just because I found it to be what the fuck. Like in just the trailer of Trap,
Yeah.
you completely, and I shouldn't be comparing him to his daughter because they're
No,
two
I'm
completely
just
different
curious. But
people.
they came out
But
so
that
close
said,
together. That's why I'm
and
asking.
they are kind of
Yeah.
structured the same way. I did have that same complaints with her film. But I loved her setup more
Hmm.
because I had no goddamn clue what was going on in that movie, and every single clue that it gave you just raised more questions.
Okay.
And I loved that feeling of like, I have no fucking clue what's going on, and now you found that this is just mystery is just on top of mysteries. With this one, what's happening from the get-go, that it is a concert, that Josh Hartnett is a serial killer, and that the FBI is aware that somebody in this massive, like, concert, like Taylor Swift-esque concert, is a serial killer. So they have they have hundreds of police officers and securities, and they're checking every single male in the building, and they're not letting people out unless they've checked them. You understand that going into this. So whereas, and then it's got, the standard M. Night twist towards the end about, how they knew he was there, and, who, and all this stuff. But that said, like, a lot more about the setup than Watchers, which is literally just, we're in a room and every night people show up and watch us and we can't move. And we go out in the day and forage for berries. And that, like, it was such less of a, you were given so much less info. And I almost love that better. So,
Well, I'm definitely
yeah.
going to watch this one while it's still in theaters, just because I do want to know, good or bad, what
It
the
was
twist
fun.
is. And
It was still fun,
okay.
even if I, got angry in the third act, which is not new for me on a lot of M. Night movies.
Yeah.
Not by any stretch. I mean, I think when we saw Old together, I'm pretty sure like I was infuriated
Yeah.
by the third act in that. I was just like, I don't even know what the fuck what they were thinking. And yeah,
I mean,
I
that
was
one
not
has
quite as
such a
angry
good
with this
setup. I mean,
one.
it's such old is like one of the best, most intoxicatingly Twilight Zone concepts. And once you get to the end, it kind of just cheapens it a bit.
I was like, I don't even understand
Yeah.
what happened. Yeah, and
I've already
so
forgotten. I kind of
yeah,
remember, but basically forgotten. Yeah.
this is not quite as hard of a turn as that one went, but it was still the third act, it just kept going. And I
Yeah.
was like, we can end now. I get it. We can end now. Find it. Let's wrap this up, people. I'm
But
out
I
of
love that M.
popcorn,
Night
but yeah.
does his own movies and kind of self-funds
Yeah.
them and is his own machine. So respect to him.
His daughter plays his other daughter, not the
Hmm.
one who made Watchers, but his other daughter plays the musician in
Oh,
this,
cool.
and she wrote like 14 songs for it. So yeah, good on them for doing family stuff.
Yeah.
We're talking about Adam's family later. So
Yeah.
yeah, good on them for keeping it in the fam. So yeah, and again, great setup, even aggravating, but still really really fun in scenes.
The more
So my
important
daughter
question
loved it.
is
Mhm.
more as the twist is how is Josh Hartnett getting hotter, and when will the Dorian Gray portrait of him that looks all disfigured be revealed?
Yeah, I texted Elric like
It's true.
I
I
I
see it. He is ridiculous.
so when he was in The Faculty and some of the other films that he did, like when I was younger, when I should have like when he was like he should have been the one that I was looking at going, oh, he's so dreamy. I didn't find him to be dreamy. Like he was not one of the teen heartthrobs that I remember from that age range. But looking back, like when he appeared in Penny Dreadful a couple of
Yeah.
years ago, I was suddenly like, oh my God,
But he was a man. He was a
wow.
man when he came
Mhm.
back for that, and I do think he's someone who does look better as a
Yeah.
like more macho kind of figure somehow.
And he's great in
Yeah.
this too. I mean, like he looks hot in this. So Josh Hartnett aging in reverse. I need to like start a list of those people, the
Yeah.
guys who like get sexier with age and women as well. I
Yeah.
think that is an interesting thing where you like kind of get sexier as you go. So,
My
yeah,
cousin,
but he's doing that.
Vinny, actress, absolutely.
Marissa
Marissa
Tomei.
Tomei is so much. I am so much more attracted to her in this like now period where she's probably like a decade older than me. I just find she is so like playing in Spider-Man or whatever. She's meant to be Aunt May, and I'm always like, oh my God, she's so attractive. Yeah. No, some people just they age into that comfort maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell quickly a couple things. So we did a live Colors of the Dark minus you, as in half of it. So it's just I think
Yes.
I introduced it as Color of the Dark. But Heidi Honeycutt, shout out to her for filling in. And we had Chuck Russell coming on, who was about to show his Witchboard the next night, which is one of the few films I couldn't see because it was the movie after my movie. So there was no way we were going to be able to see a movie. But very excited to see it. And it's a really fun convo because he talked a lot, because obviously people like us are obsessed with him talking about hearing his take on practical effects because he's so obviously his films are so good at it. And he actually revealed that he had this real interest in close-up magic, and he talks all about it. And the cool thing is, I did just now manage to get the sound from it. So next week we will review. We're going to put this out just as a bonus episode, a straight bonus
Nice.
between the 2 weeks. I just checked with Ernie, and the files work. So it won't be perfect because the second half kind of relied on visuals, but whatever. The interview with Chuck will be great, and so people can hear that and look forward to his take on Witchboard. Yeah, real quick. I mean, big thanks to Mitch Davis. Fantasia Fest is it's incredible because it's a 3-week. I was only there for the middle week, but to think it's 3 weeks and at the pace I was at, I couldn't have done more than a week because you're going to like 3 or 4 movies a day. You're at a bar till 3 a.m. every night. It is a real deal festival. And it's beautiful because so many people from other festivals, people from Hollywood and filmmakers are all coming there and mixing, and it was so great. And for us, we had this amazing, I guess you would call him a handler, but it was the person one of the people who actually selected the film. His name is Justin Langlois, and it was just did such a good job of looking after us and the team, and it's truly special getting to see Montreal's just the coolest freaking city too. And I ate I ate it like he told me to eat the
pasta.
poutine. Yeah, it's so good.
Oh, did you go get poutine?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay. I was
good.
gonna say, did you get just the smoked meat platter as well?
I did,
That
yeah,
was
on the side, but we were eating it at the first day, and I was like, oh my God, if I eat this too many times, I'm going to die, but it was so good.
yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so with Fantasia, definitely if you can get to it next year, go, because it was just so much fun. But I'll do real brief rundown, so I'll try to do 3 at a time. because again, some of these movies are super early in their journey, and so it's less me like yay or nay, but just putting it on people's radars. So I'll try to be quick. But the first one is really funny when Heidi's on the show, she picks. Running down VHS, and everything she's picking is little kind of creepy puppet movies from the 80s, like Ghoulies and stuff. And the first movie she would have loved, she missed it. It was on before. It's called Frankie Frico, and it's by Steve Kostansky, who did The Void, and most importantly, Psycho Gorman, which we all think is just this magical, kind of amazing family movie. This is his love letter to all 80s movies with little creatures, and it's basically this yuppie guy who just seems like a real dick, like he's a bit of a loser, doesn't know how to, do anything with his wife. He's just one of these characters who's kind of in an Office Space movie, and he sees at the back of the yellow pages, that invite Frankie Frico and he'll make your life a party kind of thing, like 1-800 kind of number. And he calls this number, and his entire life gets turned upside down because this little punk, yeah, it's all puppets, like it's puppet and two of his friends come and basically upend this guy's life, and it goes really surreal, really bizarre, very knowing and winking humor at that whole genre. So anyone who's seen movies from that time, this is the ultimate love letter to those movies, and I think this is going to be kind of like a real crowd pleaser. I'm not sure where it's going to end up, so it might be early days of the festival, but it was very funny to see him, and people were very raucous for this. So that's Frankie Frico, definitely in the Psycho Gorman mode. The one I was curious to see, and that you would have, I would have watched it with you, would have been The Soul Eater, and that is Bastillo and Mari again.
Yep.
So from the directors of Inside, and this is a French one. It's kind of like a procedural, pretty restrained for the first two-thirds about these murders happening in a
Really?
yeah.
I didn't think they did restrain.
No, it's I mean, it goes real hard at the end, and there's a flashback that is one of the harder murder scenes you'll ever see. But it's basically a cop is hitchhiking to get to the small village where there's been these crimes. He teams up with the local cop who's had some personal issues, and they're trying to figure out why these families. It's very odd. It's like a husband and wife brutally murdered, and it looks like they've done it to each other, but you can't really decode. But somebody's left this creepy wood carving of this kind of creature, just with big antlers, and you don't know what it is. And it turns out in this town, there's this character that people talk about, the Soul Eater, and it's got this. It reminds me a little bit at the start of maybe like a Wendigo type story, and by the end of this thing, it is going super wild about a small town and their belief system. And I think this will be one I would expect maybe would end up on a Shudder or something based on the material, but we'll see. But I thought it was actually pretty interesting where it went, and was definitely a serious kind of almost drama thriller for most of it. So a little different for them. And I'll do one more before we break over to the next one. Probably stylistically the closest to the kind of stuff I would do is one called Electrophilia. And this one, like with the people I went with, it was maybe a little too slow and pure drama to them, but I know the people at the festival really like this one. It's a Spanish film, and it has an amazing visual. A woman is working as a vet on a farm in the opening scene, and a massive lightning bolt just tears right through her, and she collapses. And then when you see her in hospital, she has the marks that go right along her body, and it's really intense. And it becomes the easiest way to sell it. As soon as it ended, I said to people, "This is basically the movie Crash, but with lightning instead of crashes," because she can't really relate to her family and fiance and life anymore, but then she meets a survivor group of lightning strikes, old people who've been hit by lightning, and you start to realize that together they have this weird kind of power. And so it's a little less perverse than Cronenberg's Crash, but it is interesting to see the group dynamics of people who have been affected by something needing other people who could actually understand. I'd say it's like podcasting. You can't really talk to other people about movies. You need to be around other podcasters after a while. But it's a very restrained but artistically, quite beautifully made movie. That is why Fantasia is kind of special to me, was that they really don't. It's not like it's a horror festival. It's all things.
It's
all
fantasy.
These,
it's sci-fi. It's
all
martial
these
arts.
genres, and I think when you're seeing things multiple times in a day, that's really a nice mixture. So those are the ones to start. I'll keep going in between yours.
Okay, so I'm going to take us to, this was recommended by one of our listeners, had tweeted at me about that. I know it's not, X'd me about this.
We got to figure that out. That's a terrible.
I can't even. It's weird. Anyway, they tweeted at me about this, and they were like, "You will like this." And it's an anime show on Netflix right now called Grim Variations. And this definitely fed my love of fairy tale horror. It is 6 episodes, so super short, very contained, and they're all anime episodes that are fairy tales, known fairy tales, but they've all got these kind of horror twists, or they've been reimagined into like really, really, really dark versions of them. And I mean, these are like, traditional fairy tales anyway. Like Cinderella's already dark as fuck if you're looking at the original version, and it gets even darker. So they're all doing something a little bit more with it. Don't just think like, oh, they're making like the original Cinderella where their feet burn and things like that. No, they're really kind of twisting the stories a lot. None of these did I expect them to go where they ended up going. So really fucked up fairy tales. I ended up watching 3 episodes. This was just last night. I watched the Hansel and Gretel one, the Cinderella one, and the Pied Piper one, all back to back. And I can't wait to keep going with the other 3. And I'm bummed there's only 6 of these. This has a lot of fans. When I started researching it online, like people are already kind of, fan standing about this. So it's definitely gained quite a bit of fandom. These are short. They run like 30 to 40 minutes. And when I say anime cartoon, this is not for kids, or at least not for young kids. There is sex, there is drugs, there is murder, there's alcoholism, there's a lot of murder, there's a lot of killing people involved. And there's a lot of really heavy, fucked up emotions as well. So these are really intense, but really good. This Grim Variations, currently on Netflix. I hope they make more of these.
Okay, nice. Then I
Yeah.
watched the world premiere of a movie called The Dead Thing, and I thought it was cool.
It was
Moving
cool.
on.
I've heard that movie's
I
cool.
enjoyed it. I actually did. The
It's
first time, I will say,
cool.
just behind the scenes, of the first screening, even though it was awesome because we were with our cast and crew, and there's a lot of cathartic things that happen in the film. You're kind of in your head. It's a little funny to watch a film the first time, and with people, it's very naked. And then it was the second screening of the film that, by the end of it, I felt really good, and it was a really nice feeling to and some great conversations with people afterwards, which is cool because you don't know what people are expecting, and it might not be for them, or it might, and it might connect. So it was really fun. But I won't harp on that one. But if you're at Fright Fest, hopefully we'll see you there and come talk to us. Another one that we will be traveling with a little bit, which was very fun to see because Yellow Veil, who are doing sales distribution on ours, is also distributing a film called Rats, just called Rats. And I
Rats.
assumed it
That's
was
it.
about killer rats when I went to it.
I want it
It
to be
is
about killer
absolutely
rats.
not, but there's no way I
Oh,
can. I know we're playing with this film in Knoxville, and this is probably the most fun and the most wild, like what the fuck movie that I saw at the festival, and the people behind it are all super cool and super nice. It is basically takes place in a place called Fresno, Texas. A guy in the opening scene, a young guy, he looks like from a Gus Van Sant movie, slacker kind of guy, just starts tagging a phone booth, and he gets tackled by this hardcore cop in one of the funniest, most outrageous performances I think any of us had ever seen. Her name is Danielle Yvonne Ploger, and when we're all watching it, she's playing like bigger than life SNL crazy. There's fight scenes with her. She's like this aggressive cop who basically wants to take down some just low level drug guy in this town, but she thinks he's like plotting to set off a nuke, and she's completely deranged. I mean, she's the villain and the authority figure of this movie. I think you would love this actress because when you're watching it, you're like, this person's bigger than life, and I can't imagine them being real. And the next day, we were all standing in line. We saw her in front of us, and she was this quiet, meek looking librarian with little glasses. And we went up to her afterwards, and we go, this is insane how wild you are on screen. And she was so cool. So shout out to that. I can't really do the justice because it's not really horror. It's just wild. It feels like watching Adult Swim at its like kind of wildest. So I think these got
mhm.
Carl Fry and Maxwell Nelevetsky. They just made a wildly fun movie, and it's very unpredictable. So I'm looking forward to people seeing that. I think it's some movies are more tailored for a late night at a festival to like animate you. Mine is not that movie, like for a late night kind of thing, and this is definitely that kind of movie. So shout out to the Rats crew, but no actual rats are in it. Well, there is a rat. There's one rat, but it's not about.
There's one
It
rat.
means
Okay,
rats.
I'm in.
It means rats in the sense of being a narc on somebody,
Okay.
or in the police sense. There is a very artistically, nicely made movie called Parvulos, which was one of the big centerpiece movies from Mexico, and it was kind of like my friends I went with didn't like it as much because they were like, oh, we've seen Walking Dead and things like that, and I agree, but I think the treatment of this did feel original. It was like 3 young brothers, the oldest being like a teenager, and then 2 little kids, and I would say these are some of the best child performances I've seen in a movie for a very long time. Like everyone feels authentic, and it is in some sort of post whatever apocalypse, post-virus, you're not really sure. They live in the middle of nowhere trying to find food, and they are basically keeping this isn't really a spoiler, so I'll say like they're keeping their parents in the basement because they have turned and they're hoping at some point they'll figure out that there's a cure, but they have to feed their parents and their parents could get out of control. And so it's got this emotional hook to a zombie
Ooh.
store and things get increasingly more dangerous. I'd say even if you were mixed on it in the middle of this, there was a truly horrific sequence that I was like, that's one of the best horror scenes that I've seen in a while, especially with a zombie, which it's just hard to make, not hard to make a zombie movie, but hard to put a stamp on it after we've had 10 years of a TV show. You know, it makes it just that much trickier. But I thought it was had some really interesting stuff in it. So that's
I'm
marvelous.
I'm wondering if this is kind of so there's another zombie film that somebody just told me. I was on set
Yeah.
today and somebody was like, you have to watch one called Handling the Undead.
Oh yeah, I did. I
And
watched
so,
it a few weeks ago.
oh, you did.
I
You talked about
I
it
think
last episode.
briefly. It's very interesting. It's the one that I mentioned that I didn't. I think if you hadn't seen that French one, sometimes they come back. You
Yeah.
would love it because it feels totally original. But because I'd seen that and I preferred that treatment of what they're because it's a very realistic take. Like if your loved one suddenly came back that day, like what's going to happen? And it's very much like just real time vibe to it. No, definitely worth checking out for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So I now that we're seeing zombies, like that's honestly like the fourth time I've heard zombie films coming back this week. So I'm questioning now if we're kind of on the start of the
could
trend
be.
because the trend always starts on the indie level.
Yeah, it could
So
be.
we'll see. We'll see.
And I'll do one more on this before we go. And
Yeah.
I got to meet Toby Poser, who from the Adams Family, and that was somebody who we're planning on having them all on the show
Yeah.
at some point. But
I've always wanted to meet her. I'm fascinated. I've said on the show, I can barely coordinate my family enough to go get dinner together. The idea of making movies is insane. So
well, and
yeah,
this
I
one's a little
would love
different.
to chat.
Yeah, no, she's absolutely lovely. One of my highlights of the trip was actually just sitting down and talking to her, and she came to Dead Thing, which was super sweet of her. And John came. She was there for most of the festival, and John only came for their premiere. But Hellhole's quite different because it's still co-written by one of their daughters, Lulu, but it's all been basically rejigged and set in Serbia, so it's like very different, for them, given that they're almost always setting their films in, their backyard
Aren't
essentially.
they
Yeah,
Ozarks?
or
Yeah.
New York State,
Yeah.
kind of filmmaking. And so and also the tone was quite different. So I think like for me, this one's a little less in my wheelhouse because it's like quite funny, and it's like which it's still funny. It's kind of a play on The Thing, but the difference between this and The Thing is in The Thing, it's all about the tension of not knowing who the thing is, and in this, it's all you always are with the person who has the creature in it. And so there isn't that tension. So it becomes much more about, but what do we do about it? And that's where I think the comedy comes from. But I'm not going to ruin it because the opening scene really surprises you where the tone of it goes. But like, I think it feels like an old school sci-fi original, like the way. And so I think for some people, maybe a younger audience, this is going to like be like getting new people to watch their other films because of the tone. So I think that's a win on that level. So yeah, so that's probably coming to Shudder very soon. Might even be out by the time this comes out.
And you're right. Adam Stanley is New York. For some reason, I thought they were shooting like Mountains of the Ozarks. But
No,
yeah, it looks like
they're
they are.
outside New York, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But again, they are a powerhouse, and they also had a beautiful short play before it that they made that is part
Oh,
of the anthology series that is going to be on Screenbox, based on I don't want to say Reddit, but it could be something like stories that existed in some form and then have been adapted. And that short was really beautiful. So look out for those on Screenbox soon, I think. But okay,
amazing.
and then I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, I'll go quickly and then I'll do a quick book mention. So I just wanted to give a plug for this because I have a feeling it will appeal. I New season of Unsolved Mysteries came to Netflix, so they're on their fourth season now, and I've been really enjoying it. If you were a kid in the 80s into the 90s, Unsolved Mysteries was like your gateway drug into horror, tenfold. Like just the host, everything, how it was set up, because it was very much like, here's a murder that we never solved, but then it was these people saw aliens. What do you think it could be? If you know what they saw, here's our hotline. And it would get into historical stuff like, could Bigfoot be real? Here's a whole episode on Bigfoot.
Yes,
Have
is
you
the
ever seen
answer.
Bigfoot? Here's our hotline. And so it was very much like a murder mystery show is what you tuned in for, but every like 3 episodes they would have one that was really just attaching itself to like supernatural, cryptids, aliens, something like that. And for little horror nerds like me, this show was everything. And so I just finished watching the new season of which is season 4 that they have on Netflix. And this one, it's got some gems. It's got kind of the standard murder mystery, we don't know what happened, but then it's also got one on Jack the Ripper, which is
Oh,
honestly one
cool.
of the best kind of, hour-long documentaries on Jack the Ripper I've ever seen. It was great. Like I followed it and immediately was able to talk about like all the different murders that took place, and it was really easy to follow on what is a very complicated crime that was never solved, with a lot of different people that were suspected of doing it. And then the last episode of the season is on the Mothman, but not the Mothman in West Virginia. This is about more recent sightings of the Mothman around the Chicago area. And so it was really fun just to kind
Wait,
of
so these are
see
new
the
episodes?
these are brand new episodes. I
Oh,
mean, obviously, the main host has passed
yeah,
away,
yeah.
but yeah.
Oh, so it's just called
So
it's just called
Unsolved
I
Mysteries, and
didn't
it's the
connect.
same
Oh.
vibes, same music, same logo. It's just a
Ooh,
different narrator, and they're now on their 4th season. They're short seasons. There's only like 5 episodes in this fourth
cool.
season. I think the first one only had like five
Yeah.
episodes, but it's still that mix of unsolved murder, weird ghostly thing. Did these people really see aliens? Was that Bigfoot? Could Nessie be real? And then another murder. So again, Jack the Ripper, Mothman, I'm in. But what this led me to say, I wonder if the original Unsolved Mysteries are streaming anywhere, because I want to go back and watch and see what I found to be so special when I was watching this as like an 8-year-old that I thought was so captivating. So I was able to find some of them, but while I was searching, I discovered a documentary called Unsolved Mystery Behind the Legacy that was all about the original show, about the host,
Robert
about what
Stack.
made
Yeah.
it so. Robert Stack. And it's on Tubi right now. It's also on Sling, I think. But yeah, Unsolved Mystery Behind the Legacy. It was short. It was like an hour long, and it was made by one of the producers of the original show. And it was just kind of about behind the scenes, how they made the show, how they picked what shows to do, topics, Robert Stack, all of it. And it was just a really nice kind of look at the lightning in a bottle that was that show back during its heyday.
Cool.
So Unsolved Mysteries, new season on Netflix, and Behind the Legacy documentary is quite fun.
One that you would have really enjoyed going to with me was the world premiere of the 4K restoration of Cube. Friend of
Oh
the
yeah,
show.
I love that movie.
I had not seen it in full since I saw it at a film festival. So like, when it came out, and it had aged so well. Like it works so well still conceptually, because the art design is just so good. But seeing it in 4K, I got to have lunch with a friend of the show, Vincenzo Natalie. He wrote to me saying when he got there, he was like, "Ooh, there's a ramen bar inspired by Blade Runner design." And so we met there, and it looked exactly like Blade Runner. It was really cool. And then we went to this that night, and it just is a total banger. And like the performance,
Mhm.
it just holds up in a really exciting way. And I think it coming to 4K will get a whole new fan base. But my short analogy that I did put on X, but it's like, if you want to understand how cool Fantasia is, day one, I'm on a podcast, and my number one pick, we ran down VHS covers. Spoiler for when you hear the bonus, but whatever. And my number one VHS cover is Pin, one of my favorite movies, but also one of my favorite VHS covers. And on the last day of the festival, I'm in line to see Vincenzo's movie, Cube, and the star of Cube, who's also the star of Pin, is standing there. He turns around and goes, "Oh, Vincenzo," and they're hugging because they're high school friends. And it's David Hewlett. And I'm sitting there going, "Wait a minute. How can you be here? I just talked about Pin a week ago, and now we're talking." And then I swear to God, this is true. I have witnesses. Vincenzo points to me and goes, "Oh, this is Elric. He had a film playing. It's the Dead Thing." And David, like, "Oh yeah, I was at that. That was cool." And then he goes, and he also hosts a podcast called Colors of the Dark. And David Hewlett, the actor from Penn, says, "I listened to every episode of that. I'm a horror freak. I love that show." And I was like, "This is fucking crazy." I'm like, "Beam me up, Scotty," because the
Oh,
star of Penn listens to our show. So there you go. If David Hewlett, if you're listening, you were a highlight of my
thank you,
last
David
day.
Hewlett.
Yeah, and his performance, I got to say, his performance, I always feel like that, some performances, like when you're in a movie like Cube, it's so hard to modulate everyone at once because it's
Mhm.
like almost like a play. He has always stood out to me as like the thing that grounds everything in that movie, because he's the moody one, not really
Yep.
buying in and hiding secrets. And no,
He's
he's really
the
good.
antagonist
Yeah,
the whole
yeah, he's
time, and
really
he's
good.
so good in it.
So
Yeah.
that was definitely a highlight. That was like one of the last days. The big premiere that happened the day before, and I won't go deep on this one right now because it's coming out this weekend or maybe next. And it was Cuckoo, which is obviously a very, people are very excited. Tillman Singer directed, this is a neon film right after we had a very successful Longlegs. The previous film by this director, Lose, I think is just utterly fascinating, and I really like it visually and design. This is a much bigger swing. I kind of want to table this for when you've seen it because it will be a
Are
more
you going to come see it again with me?
maybe I would. Like, I will be honest, I didn't really connect to it, and I think because it's real weird, and I love weird, but it's real weird from like frame one, as in like, here are the family, and I'm like, wait, they don't feel real. Like, what am I watching? It threw me a bit, but I will tell you, there are, and Hunter Schafer's in this, and Dan Stevens gets to go real weird, about as weird as anyone's ever let Dan Stevens go. Pretty funny playing a German, a guy in the German Alps. But I will say, the thing that has stuck with me, like from my first experience watching it to like a few days later, it has a couple set pieces, that one in particular that my co-writer Webb, after we walked out, he was like, I haven't in 20 years had the hair on my arms stand up. He was telling me he hasn't felt that in 20 years. And there's one scene where just there's this moment and he felt it, and he was like, wow. And because it's so unnerving, it's quite early in the movie, and it's such a strange, there's a little bit of it in the trailer, but when you're watching it, it's pretty exciting, and it has moments like that. So I think my issue isn't the directing or the tones or all that. It's maybe a little bit the script, but very interesting movie, and I'm kind of excited to see how people feel about it, because obviously Longlegs is pretty weird but did really well.
Mm-hmm.
This is weirder, definitely tonally weirder, and maybe funnier and stuff. I think you will dig it, but this is one of the ones I think it's a little hard.
You know, I love weird.
Yeah, I know, and I do too. It's hard to predict. So I definitely, let's table any more talk until we've both seen it for that one, because everyone's looking forward to that. And just a couple last ones, because one in particular, these are no longer at Fantasia. So I'll just wrap up these two. One, Ted Geoghegan, he is obviously a big part of Fantasia in terms of the press and everything. I'd seen him multiple times tweet in the last few weeks about a film called The VOURDALAK. And obviously, we all know the VOURDALAK myth because of
VOURDALAK,
yeah, from Black Sabbath, and that amazing Italian film that I always talk about. I think it's just called Night of the Devils, where the guy gets trapped with a family, and it's just, that's my favorite telling. But this is a pretty faithful version of the Boris Karloff story. Obviously the Tolstoy story that was based. But this film is really neat. This is his favorite he had seen in a while. That's what Ted's tweets. And I will give a spoiler in a second, but I'll warn people. There's a French, like, emissary, I think that's how you say emissary, from the French, back when they would wear the makeup on their face and everything. So that time period, where it'd be like a white face makeup, and he's wearing frilly everything. So almost Barry Lyndon-ish, but in France.
Like Baroque.
Yeah, I guess. And anyway, he's lost his horse and his way. He's in the middle of a forest in not Romania, but a country that is not where he's from. Somebody tells him, you have to get out of the woods. He comes to this family, and everyone in the family is missing the father, the elderly father. He went off to fight a war, but he left instructions saying, if I am not back in 6 days, if I return, do not let me in, because it is not me anymore. It will be VOURDALAK. And so they're all a little worried. And then, of course, he comes back. And this French guy, it's like, doesn't fit in. He's already confused about the weird tradition. It's kind of like a dark comedy in a lot of ways. And I think honestly, I think you will really like this. This was on Amazon Now. So now, if you don't want to know anything about the creature, the VOURDALAK and the dad, don't listen. But I'm just going to give this one little part because it was so unexpected and might make somebody watch this, which is, when the dad comes back, you're just expecting like a guy in old makeup or something. When he comes back, it is played basically by this puppet. And I don't mean cheesy little jokey puppet.
Wow, because immediately I picture like sock puppet.
No, this is a creepy, weird, full, big, skull-looking puppet for the rest of the movie, but the guy's voice. And it's almost makes the film feel like a Svankmajer type crossover, and it is what makes the movie unique. Like, I've never seen anyone quite do this, where they're making a realistic movie about the story, and then this thing comes back, and at first it's almost like, what? It was like a joke, and as it goes, it becomes kind of creepy. I thought it was very cool that they used that effect. So this is a good rec. I watched this like 2 nights ago. And then lastly, and I know this is exhaustive.
Oh, well, really quick, I will correct myself. Not Baroque. I just had to Google it because I was like, wait, when did people paint their faces in French? And I don't have the title for it, but it is not a Baroque time period. It was done to denote wealth in the late 1700s, according to Google. Thank you so
So
much.
it's probably
So that'd
pre-Marie
be
Antoinette, like around that, or maybe a little bit
no,
before.
this would be like Victorian.
Okay,
This
and
would
I'm
be like
terrible with this part of history, but it's fun that they're like trying to go for something that's specific like that. It's a French film. Um,
yeah. Okay. Yes. And what I'm noting here is that we know nothing about French history, especially when it comes to fashion. So ignore us because everything
uh,
we've said has likely been
yeah,
wrong.
no,
It was 18th century. 18th century, I know, was when they like whited their
we
faces. So
studied
yeah.
it in New Zealand, and it all went out of my brain. Yeah, in history class, and
I'm sure because somewhere in my theater degree, I'm sure that that came up because we would have studied the plays that were written at that time period. I don't know. I'm picturing a harpsichord. That's all I got. If there's a harpsichord, we're there.
there probably
Okay.
was with the guy. And lastly, and I know this has been a lot because it's a lot of movies, and we'll be back to normal soon. I, I watched a movie last night. We got a screener, so it's about a month early. It's coming out in September in the U.S., and it's the best film I've seen this year. Best, not just horror film,
Wow,
best
that's
film,
bold.
especially after just coming back from Fantasia. And ironically, unbelievably, it's a movie from Montreal. Wasn't at Fantasia this year. I was at Fantasia the year before, and is only now about to come to America. It is I was on the edge of my fucking seat like I haven't been all year. It is called Red Rooms. I had heard about it, and
Oh shit! I just heard about this.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
really excited to see it because I didn't, but trust me when I say do not read anything, because even if you do, you probably can't spoil it. But basically, it was so mesmerizing because I didn't, even till the end. I'm working out what I think the story is about. It's that kind of movie. It is so well made. It basically, there's a high profile case of a serial killer called Chevalier, who has killed three young teenage blondes, high school girls, on camera in the dark web, and he is on trial. So it opens with this very dry, like Anatomy of a Fall type court case, and it feels like you're going to just watch it for a very long time. He is in this like glass box, which is, I guess, how they do it, and he's been accused. They have all this evidence. It sounds very much like this guy had to have done it. And watching the trial, like, because they let some people in from outside if you get in line early enough, there's this model who's very stoic. You don't really know what she's thinking most of the movie, and she, as you watch, it's clear that she is obsessed by the case, but you don't really know why. And in her personal life, she's a model, online model. She does everything online. She's like obsessed with online culture. She plays poker to make her money online, and has a very mysterious life. That is all I'm going to say. It's about her obsession with the case, and that's all you need to know. And I'm telling you, this is like even above Long Legs. I was surprised. Like, this is the movie that most I just was like fucking floored. And the performance by the lead actress was terrific. So this one is the one to look out for. Red Rooms coming, like I said, I think it's in about 3 weeks, or maybe somewhere in the start of September. But I'll update you because I won't be here next week. So I want to make sure I put it on people's radars to look out for. And I don't think I'm alone, because when I looked up the reviews, it looked like, I think it even won like Canadian Film of the Year in this last, their version of the Oscars. So
People were talking about this on set today and
cool.
how great it is. And I was confused. There's a graphic novel series by a guy named Ed Piskor that's called Red Room, and it is intensely extreme. It sounds like it's a similar concept where it's about a webcam murderer, a guy who in a private red room kills people and people pay money and it's cryptocurrency.
If you
And
look it up, I
everything.
think there's actually a lot of movies made with
There
that.
may be. It sounds like an urban legend to
Yeah,
begin with, and people are pulling from
from what
that.
I would guess, this guy went down that road and then realized, I don't want to make it about the killer. I'm going to make it about the people who become obsessed with true crime. It's almost like a weird art housey horror critique on that, and it just makes it feel so different than what it could just be, a shocking Red Room, movie. Yeah, definitely put it on the radar though, because it was super super.
Wow. Okay. I will quickly run through some of the books that I have been reading for the past couple of weeks. So I'll start, and I'm going to do these super quick, so y'all keep up. I'm going to start with House at the Bottom of the Lake by Josh Malerman. So I picked this up a couple of weeks ago when we did a beach day, because I was like, this feels like a great summer movie or summer book. And it was. This is Josh Malerman, who most people know for writing Bird Box. And he has another great book called Goblins
Daphne
out.
was the one I talked about earlier this year. It's one of my favorites of the year. Daphne.
Yeah.
Really good.
So he's just banger across the board. I loved this one because if you look, it's short. This is like novella length, and it's really simplistic about a guy and a girl who are starting to date. And on one of their very first dates, he borrows a kayak from his uncle and takes her out on this lake. And they end up kind of finding these hidden lakes off of that lake. And while they're going through one of these hidden lakes, there's literally this house that they can see like under the water. And it's not just like a house that's been covered up in water. It is fully functioning. Like, you know, the lights still come on and everything like that. And so they start exploring
Mm.
it, and then they get scuba gear and they
Mm.
keep exploring it, and it becomes an obsession, but then finding out like them trying to figure out what's up with the house, like why is it the way that it is. This one, it was great for me with my aquatic horror love, and it was a quick read, which was really nice. It was very much about emotions of kind of falling in love with somebody as well, an obsession, so it was cool. Okay, next up I'll do two graphic novels. Okay, so first up is Eat the Rich. This is like ultimate 1% horror. This is by Sarah Gailey. This came out, I want to say last year, 2 years ago. It took me a little bit to get back to this one. This one's from Boom Studio. And this is about a girl who is dating this guy, and she knows that he is super rich. But she still loves him, and it is her first time going to visit his hometown. And that's as far as I'll take it,
Hmm.
because it definitely has a lot of twists along the way, but it is very much like a 1% horror about this girl who has a much more modest upbringing being kind of submerged suddenly into this insanely rich community with insanely rich people. And it's got a Get Out vibe to it, where she immediately from the get-go kind of one connects more with the staff than with the really wealthy people, because she thinks that they seem more down to earth, and two, immediately picks up that there's something seriously wrong with a lot of these people, and it continues from
Mm.
there. So this was great, and I absolutely loved the art in it. Next graphic novel, I do not have a copy in front of me, but Bone Orchard. So Bone Orchard, this is the second time I've talked about one of the Bone Orchard inclusions. These are coming out from Image Comics, and it's an anthological series coming out from Jeff Lemire. And I will read anything Jeff Lemire does. Like, he's just fantastic. The art in this one done by Andrea Sorrentino, and I loved this one so much. Bone Orchard, 10,000 Black Feathers. And the concept of it is that these two girls are best friends when they're teenagers, and they're avid gamers. They make up stories on their own. When I say gamers, like they're like D&D gaming. They're kind of making up their own adventures. They're making up their own stories. And one day, one of them disappears. And the other girl is so traumatized by the fact that her friend has disappeared, is kind of presumed dead. The whole family is ripped apart by it. All of her friends are ripped apart. It feels like the town's ripped apart. She's like, I can't handle this trauma anymore. I can't live with this. I'm going to go move away for college. And so now it's years later. She hasn't done very well in college. She decides to come back home, and she basically comes back to that trauma. And a lot of people who are still living in this disappearance, that they never solved anything, that are still living with this person that they miss deeply. And she comes back and submerges in it even more so than she was before she left. Like, it hits her
Mm.
tenfold, and starts researching some of the games that they were playing at the time, thinking that it's connected to the disappearance. So she basically picks up where she left off and starts trying to figure out what happened to this girl, looking back at some of like the more interesting role-playing games that they were playing at the time. And this one, I love this one so much. It volleyed back and forth between her current now in like her 20s, and then what the girls were doing in their teens when they were when she originally went missing. So this one, outstanding. Bone Orchard, 10,000 Black Feathers. Absolutely loved it.
Interesting.
Last one, I will give a quick mention. And this is just because it was really fun. Goth Parenting. The Dark Joys of Raising Baby Bats. So this, I will say, it's a fun book. Like, it's meant to be a humorous book that's all about, you know, like, how do you diaper your child in a goth way and things like that. Like, it's very much meant to be a funny book. But I would give this to parents now as a present, just because the biggest takeaways I had from it was that the most important thing that you can do for your kids is be yourself,
Mm.
and not try to be like, I'm the model parent. Like, you know, be a parent who's goth, be a parent who's punk rock, wear your Motley Crue shirt, and like being yourself in front of your kids in the most important thing that you can give them. And with that, letting your kids be themselves as well. And, that one day they want to be a princess and the next day they don't, like just kind of going with it. And so, yeah, it was meant to be a humor book, but I definitely cleaved out this bigger, important message of, it's important just to be who you are in front of your kids and not try to put on this like parental air.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
I did want to mention
that
one.
was a lot.
No, this is a lot for an episode.
Yeah.
We won't be together 2 weeks from now, just so our listeners know. But don't worry, you'll be in perfectly good hands.
Yeah.
And we'll be putting out the bonus from in between. But I did want to mention something we never really talk about, and I think it's because until you're at a festival, you don't pay that much attention sometimes, and that's shorts. And I'm gonna be honest, I thought the shorts I saw there were even more impressive than the feature. I was like blown away by some of them, and I'm just gonna throw out some titles. I won't even tell you what 3 of them are about, but they're 3 of the best like horror type shorts I've seen. Like they just feel like features. Look out for them if you're on the festival circuit. One is called Hold Up. One is called Dead Tooth from England, which is really funny, and a really creepy one called Dream Creep. But I did want to give special shout out to one that I think it will be one of your favorite things you could do. It is completely joyous. There's a film called Roger is a Serial Killer, and the director, his name is Don Swanos, and we ended up hanging out with him for a few days while we're up there before we saw it. And so, I'm always curious to see what someone's going to make, but it actually had it was actually one of the most special moments of the festival because there was a Texas-based actor. His name's Mark Reeb. He's been in a lot of people's movies. A couple days before I was going to start shooting my movie, he sent me money, like a decent amount of money, so we could start our movie with just no strings, just sent it. Super nice, like the kind of thing humans don't do, just to be kind, because I'd helped out on a film that he had been in. And so he was on my mind. He really tragically and very young passed away in the last year.
Oh.
Really shockingly for a lot of people who knew him. And he's one of the stars of the short film. And it's one thing if he was just okay in it and if it was a pretty good film, but he is like riotously funny. And this is like one of the best horror comedies as a short, which I think sometimes works better short. It's Sarah Paxton from The Innkeepers. She is she is a podcaster, and she's been making a podcast called Roger's a Serial Killer. And she's come home for the holidays to talk to her mom, played by Barbara Crampton, in I think one of the funniest uses I've ever seen of her. Like, I think she is. It just like was so the timing in the short is so good in terms of comic timing. Anyway, she comes back saying she's started a podcast. It's called Roger's a Serial Killer. The problem is Roger is her stepdad, played by this guy Mark Reeb, and so she's talking about her new podcast, and he walks in the room like, "What? What's your podcast about?" Like, wait, me? And so she has this whole theory, it's already been live, about her stepfather being the serial killer, and she's charted all the graphs of it, and Barbara Crampton's now buying into it because it's a podcast, and it is about the craziness that ensues once that comes out at this Christmas family dinner, and it is fucking hilarious. And so if I'm gonna give a little special love, I know it's probably still doing festivals, but when this is online, I think people are gonna I was thinking of you because I think it's your perfect kind of comedic timing. So shout out to this one. And it was so touching because Mark's so good in it, and to know he's passed and to know he's making people laugh, and it ended with a little tribute to him at the end, like a still frame. So it was, it was definitely, I felt, it gave us the feeling to see this person doing what he would have loved. Nothing probably would have made him happier. And so that was probably actually the nicest moment of the whole festival, to be honest. But I think truly it's also just a great short. So Roger is a Serial Killer. Put that on your to see list.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's get to our Night Flight pick of the week. Okay, so Night Flight. Night Flight has always been a rite of passage, a trip of counterculture discovery, old and new. The iconic 80s series is back as Night Flight Plus, streaming service available on all major devices, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and mobile devices like iOS and Android. And so we have been picking a Night Flight title that is streaming on there every week for the past couple of weeks. And so tonight I have picked Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker.
Ooh, aka Night Warning.
Night Warning from 1981. And I picked this because I was just talking about it on set today with somebody about how it's oddly like fighting for LGBTQ rights.
Early,
Like
yeah.
it's got this like really early kind of portrayals that it's almost now kind of being celebrated because of that. Susan Tyrrell is going nuts in this movie, absolutely nuts. This was a video nasty, was deemed like the worst of the worst, and then later, now we can get it, but for a long time it was really hard to find copies of this. And so the fact that you can now just stream it on Night Flight, I think is amazing. So I know you love Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker.
It's one of my favorites of these types of movies where it's like you have the woman having an absolute psychotic breakdown the whole movie. You have this young guy trying to figure out who he is and his sexuality. Then you have like Bill Paxton as a bully, and
Yeah.
and there's a lot of like homophobic and misogynist like side characters who only
The
kind
police
yeah the police detective who only
yeah.
kind of strengthen the core of them. It really is special. It's a great movie to watch late at night. Like I think I've seen it like at a midnight, and I know the new Bev recently played at midnight. So watch it, put it on late. If you're going to stream it on Night Flight, and it's truly entertaining.
It's so psychosexual. And Susan Tyrrell's in a completely different movie
Yeah.
than everybody else, which just makes it so watchable every single time. So with an all access membership to Night Flight Plus, explore the exclusive home of original episodes of Night Flight and hundreds of music, documentaries, horror films, cult classics, and more lost TV treasures. Are you a pop culture obsessed weirdo? Try Night Flight Plus, says the New York Times. For a limited time, Colors of the Dark listeners can use the discount code Colors24 to save 25% on an annual Night Flight Plus membership. That code is Colors24. That breaks down to just $3.17 a month. I'm telling you, Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker alone is worth $3.17. So head on over to nightflightplus.com/sign up now and enter the code Colors24 at checkout. Thank you all so much. We will be back in just a moment with some amazing guests and an episode that I've been wanting to do for a long time. So let's dig in. Welcome back to Colors of the Dark. Tonight we are joined by not just two amazing filmmakers that I'm lucky to call colleagues. They're also two very close friends of mine, so much so that my daughter refers to them as her witchy aunts. I am proud to bring on Chelsea Stardust and Brea Grant, who are fresh off of set for shooting a brand new film. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us. Bekah, I have to tell you, at some point on set, I mentioned to one of our actors, I was like, wow, we have like three like pretty major like female horror directors here. And he was like, gosh, I hope there's not like a bomb or something. Are you guys allowed to be in the same place at the same time? And I was like, yeah, it's a problem. If something happened, we would lose like a large contingent of the female horror.
There's not a lot of us. And it was like us and Gigi was there at one point. Yeah. I know Zoe was involved. Like
we would lose a large percentage if we need to be careful about all being in the same place at the same time.
Axel Carolyn is the sole survivor they've got on her bunker just in case. They can wheel her out if they need her. So.
Yeah. One of us has to stay in a bunker at all times.
Good.
One of us, 100%. So I wanted to bring you all on because you have just coming off kind of an indie film that basically, it was like a DIY film where I was seeing you all kind of bring it to fruition, and Brea directing, Chelsea producing and directing, and kind of, this grassroots community effort that got behind it. So I kind of wanted to just, and Elric literally just premiered one at Fantasia last weekend. So I wanted just to have a big discussion about indie filmmaking. Like, why do it yourself? How do you start? Because that's always the biggest thing is like, I got an idea, I got a script. I don't know what to do with it unless somebody hands me $3 million. So kind of like, how do you get started? First, let's just start with, where did this idea come from, and how did you finally say, like, this is it, we have to make this?
Well, I want to go back to why, which the answer is can I cuss on this show? I forgot.
Yes.
I don't fucking know why we do this every time. Halfway through, I'm always like, why am I doing this? Seems like there must be an easier way to make something. But no, just kidding. I'm sort of kidding. I'm not kidding, but
you will have those moments every single time.
Yes. You have those moments, but then at some point you're like, gosh, I wish I was making something right now. It's like I've never had a kid, but I feel like it's like childbirth, like you forget about it, right? Mm-hmm. How hard it was. The idea came from, so last year during the writer's strike, my collaborator on this, Ed, and I shot a short film that we had been thinking about shooting for a couple years that we wrote together and I directed. And before we shot it, he was like, what if we made an anthology? Like before we even shot it. And I was like, cool, but before we shoot this, we should like figure out what the world is. Like, I don't want to just like shove this into an anthology. So we spent a couple of months before we shot that, like kind of outlining what the rest of the world would be and what the rest of the anthology would be. And so it's all like sort of like gig economy, late stage capitalism, like side hustle culture. Yes, I'm throwing those three things together. And so each one is like centered around like one kind of shitty modern job. And so we shot that, and that's called MLM, and it's kind of doing the festival circuit right now. And then we wrote the rest of it. We had it kind of outlined, but we wrote the rest of it out in the past year. And then we decided to make it, and we brought Chelsea on, and I don't think we would have made it without her. I think Ed and I can be pretty I think we're great partners in some ways, but we do kind of need a kick in the ass sometimes. Like, we had the money to make the short a year before we made it, and we never made it, and it took us a year to make it. So like, and we had the money for this for a little while too. And I called Chelsea one day and I said, we need a third. We need a third to come and help us, like kind of like kick us in the ass a little bit. Like, I think we both have a lot going on, and this was quite a small movie, so it's like hard to get motivated to do it. Even when we're kind of ready to go, we just needed someone to go like, okay, here's the start date. You have to be ready. And that's what Chelsea did.
It's true. When Brea called me, at first I was sort of, I thought she was looking for me to suggest someone. And then she said me. And I thought, oh, you want me? Okay. Because I think you were looking for someone who, in terms of producers, there's like creative producers, and then there's traditional producers. And creative producers, I think because I'm also a director, I'm looking at things a little bit differently, and thinking about what I like in a producer too. And I haven't produced in a very long time because I've directed so much, but I've worked for producers for like most of my life in LA. So I read the material, I saw the deck, and then I met with Ed because I obviously like know Brea very well, and I believe in Brea. That's one of the reasons I said yes, because I think Brea is one of the most talented directors out there right now. And so I loved the concept because you can't really survive as just a director anymore, and you have to be a multi-hyphenate doing lots of things, doing gig work. I have to do those things to survive. So I said yes, and the Brea and Ed directed all the parts of it, and then pending our opening, I may direct that, but let's wait and see how it all shakes out. But it was actually very nice the different kind of pressure when you're producing versus directing. But I just wanted to do everything I could to support the two of them and make sure and help problem solve if we needed it, and help bring their vision to life. But I think it all happened very quickly. I think we met in April, and then there was a bunch of people were traveling a bunch, and then we were in like hard prep in like June, I think, while people were traveling. It all happened very quickly. I just came in and I said, here's the calendar. Here's our start dates.
Honestly, I think that like people don't realize how like valuable that is to just go like, here's when we're doing it, and like jump on the board. The train is on the board. Jump on board. The train is moving. Like, get going, or like don't, or don't, because I think otherwise you can wait around and be like, oh, what if we shot it like in October? And then for me, it's almost like I've never had more than 3 weeks to prep a full feature film. So that's been like my maximum time anyway. And I'm sorry, Chelsea, I just totally interrupted you. But I think it's like, it's just, I think it is like helpful to have someone who's just like, here's when we're doing it, and then you just go, and that helps quite a bit. So she was very helpful.
I like deadlines. I like set
Chelsea loves deadlines and a spreadsheet.
Oh my God.
Lives for a spreadsheet.
A good spreadsheet is so satisfying. I totally get it. So
everyone needs that friend. I've got Bekah. as a spreadsheet. Could you guys
Yeah.
talk to the importance of because I feel like outside of LA, no one would get this. They'd think you made a film, now you make another one, you get bigger and bigger, and that's the Hollywood dream. But like here, like Moorhead and Benson, people like that, the importance of doing things self-made if you have to, in between all the waiting, because the waiting, you can just die by waiting in this town, right? So could you talk about like just taking it into your own hands like that and what the benefits of that is?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, it's Chelsea, Ed, and I are all three attached to like large projects, right? Things that like we hope go this year, but like like everyone, you can like spend your whole life just like waiting around for that shit to happen. And it takes so long. And the things you think are going to go this year go 2 years from now. And so for me, as a person who came to directing a little bit later than I think a lot of people, like I spent, my 20s and a lot of my 30s acting and not and some writing, but like less directing. I need to get better. Personally, I always want to challenge myself. So for me, it's like shooting a short last year was weird because I actually haven't shot that many shorts. And I actually have people come to me and they're like, why would you do that? You've done like a Blumhouse movie. And I'm like, because I need to get better. And like, and literally right before I shot the short last year, I called my mentor and I was like, should I do this? Like, what am I doing? Like, I don't have to do this. I don't like, I don't, it's not like in making money shooting a short. It's not like I need it financially. So it's literally just for me. And he was like, you're a creative and you have to make stuff. He's like, it's in your blood and you're going to make something regardless. So go make this thing. You're ready to go. Like, go make it. And I think that sort of applies to all of us. Like, I feel like very fortunate that we were able to have Bekah and Chelsea, who both had some downtime, because Bekah worked on the movie too. And between like all these projects, I mean, I think it's just very important to keep going because we're not in it for the money. We're in it for the whatever weird satisfaction we get from making shit.
Yeah. And the challenges that come with shooting in LA, which I feel like not everybody, well, not a lot of things for people listening, not a lot of things shoot here. Features, not a lot of features shoot here. A lot of TV does, if it's network, etc. But most things go out of state. And so shooting here was actually, it's so lovely to sleep in your own bed. But it was great. It was expensive and learned lots of things, especially as a director. I highly recommend all directors produce as well to know what that is like and what your producer has to do and oversee. But we made it happen. And I'm so, and if we had to pivot and get new crew here or there, we could do it. And it was very easy to do that, or cast. Like, casting is such a fascinating process, but we were able to just call somebody like 2 days before to be like, hey, can you come do this? And they're like, yeah, of course. And we just had so much support. I think that was one of the best things. And Brea and Ed are very good at cultivating these wonderful people. We had a really incredible cast and crew. And I think we just got so lucky, but that also speaks to them and their talents and the connections they have in this town. So that was also, and yeah, Bekah choreographed for us, which you'll see what that is when it comes out. But I think we're very lucky.
Could you talk a little bit about sculpting a project to shoot in LA on a budget? Because that's what I've done. My first feature was in LA, and then I did a Lifetime film in LA, and both of them we had to craft for LA because it's so expensive to shoot here that it was immediately like, oh, we can't do that restaurant scene. That costs a fortune. It's a park now and things like that. So could you talk a little bit about having to like look at the script and say, we can do that, we can't do this?
Yeah. I wish we had thought about that a little bit more, but so I think that there were definitely things that we had to change. I can let Chelsea talk about. We actually like lost multiple locations, as you do. But the problem with losing a location in LA is that like another location is expensive, and the permitting process is actually kind of. By the way, I don't want to talk anyone out of shooting in LA because I think that it's great. The crew is here. The crew is nice. They're really fucking good. Like your crew is so good.
Elric and I both want to do another one. Like I would shoot here if I could come up with like, the 200,000, I'd shoot here tomorrow. Like that's just how we roll.
Yeah. And then you can call your friends. You can call your friends who've like been on stuff and be like, you want to come do like a day? And like, they're totally down to do it. I can let Chelsea talk about the losing of locations because we did like figure out how to shoot everything here. It was a lot of favors. There was a lot of calling, shooting at at Ed's house, shooting at Ed's friends' houses, shooting at my friends own a studio in Burbank, and we were able to use that for free. So it was like coming up with stuff we could shoot in those locations. And Chelsea also has a friend who let us use like his space as well for very, very cheap. And we had something was set in a coffee shop. We had to like just dress a space to look like a coffee shop because we couldn't find a coffee shop like in LA that was we were gonna be able to do it without like resetting it every night, and like we couldn't close it down for the 5 days we needed to shoot. You want to talk about us losing our spaces?
Yeah.
It's still too traumatic.
Yeah, locations. I think that's something. And again, you can totally go guerrilla style, and which we did do in some instances, and you don't get a permit. You just risk it. The space I'm in right now, we shot at without one. And there's ways you can do it. You just try to get a skeleton crew. You try to make sure you're not seen on the street. You try to be quiet, like things like that.
No gear in front yards.
No gear in front.
Stop you.
And things. But I will say, for the most part, we were definitely like, we wanted to be as above board as possible on this budget. And so what people don't realize is when you get a permit, you can't do it like the 24 hours before. There needs to be time for the permit. Sometimes you have to survey areas if you're shooting after 10 p.m. Like it's a whole, and it's crazy. It's so crazy. But luckily Film LA was wonderful to work with. We got very lucky. Yeah. So there's a couple buildings. There's lots of buildings here in LA that are government buildings. And there was one we really wanted to shoot, location that we really liked. And we were talking to our contact there. We're confirming everything, triple confirming everything. And then something was flagged that we needed to have an office, like a cop on set. There's certain things like government buildings require you to have one. Even though the location waived it, it like went through Film LA, then it goes to like LAPD and the fire department, and then they flag it. And then they said, we were shooting there in 4 days. And
it was a Wednesday and we're shooting on Saturday. So
correct. And so basically I hear that we need somebody, and the bureaucracy involved in that is they need 10 days. They need 10 days, and there is nothing you can do to move it along. Like I was trying everything, and they just weren't going to budge. Like the lieutenant I was talking to, like they were not going to budge on that. They're like, it's 10 days, no matter what. So of course the location's apologizing because they told us they didn't need one. I meanwhile like, okay, great. We can't talk about this right now. I have to find another location. And we did. We got, by some miracle, and it actually turned out to be, oddly enough, a better location. And it's a place Brea had actually looked at.
Yeah, like I had made my own spreadsheets like during prep, because that's the thing about making a movie on this budget is that like you're your own locations person, right? You're like going places, you're calling people, you're trying to find locations. And my segment just had like a lot of locations, so it was just a little bit of a harangue. And I called this place and they never called me back, but I was like, well, maybe I can get there. And they did call me back and we were able to book it out. Yeah, but the nice thing is, again, like writing to what you have. It's not like I had to like call some, I didn't have to call the writer. I was the writer. I didn't have to call the financier. I was you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to call people and say, hey, can we just, can we switch something? It was just like, no, we're changing it to what we have. Same with, we also lost a location because we were supposed to shoot in Griffith Park. And instead there was, what was it? It was like a Shakespeare in the Park thing. On the day we were supposed to shoot there. So like that had to be rewritten as well. And so it's just like, it's fortunate because at least like you can write to what you need, what you can shoot, but also to like what you need at the time.
Yeah. And that's the other thing Brea had mentioned is when we had to pivot this government building to a different location, the price point, if people know, oh wait, you want to shoot in 2 days? Like, why is this such short notice? And they know they can charge you more. And so like was able to get them down.
Los Angeles.
Especially LA. Yeah. And then able to get them down a little bit, but ultimately you're kind of stuck. So we just ran with it and it ended up being a better location. I even agree with like the fact, I even think that Griffith Park, like again, we were looking at the old zoo, Shakespeare in the Park. It was literally starting like 2 days before we were supposed to start shooting. Like we couldn't pivot. But then we ended up shooting at Brand Park, which is incredible and you rarely see in movies. And so it's a more beautiful location, I think. So it all kind of worked out, but it was a scramble. There was like, those were the high blood pressure points, along with a couple like other things, but we got them solved in the nick of time and it all worked out. But that's, with shooting in LA, fees come up. You can't, like, there's so many things. And I think because this is a town where people know things film, that it's hard to get a hold of people. Like Brea said, people wouldn't call you back. You don't know who owns what building. Whereas if you're shooting in these smaller towns in other parts of the country, they're like, oh my God, you're making a movie. How cool. Yeah, you can shoot here. Yeah. We did get very lucky to get.
I missed that.
Yeah. We got houses for free. We got a stage for free. Like we did get very lucky. So that did save us some money. We got things for discounted rates. So that was helpful. But again, it's all about people just believing in the team. Like that helped a lot.
I was curious, backing into the creative, where on the fly, I get that you're rewriting for locations, but how much of the initial plan was designed around what do we have? Like with each short, were you thinking, okay, I know we have access to XYZ and these types of people, and you designed around that? Or were you just letting your creativity go in the writing and then figuring it out?
I will say, like, my initial, like, I always think that way, where I'm always like, what do I have? What can I use? Who do I know? My co-writer in this does not, and I think he'll say that too. He would definitely say that, which is kind of good. I think that we work together because I can be limiting in what I think of, and he does not limit. He's like, we're going big, we're doing all the things, like whatever we think of, we're gonna do. So we didn't, as much as I think I have in the past, like gone like, okay, what do I have access to, and like written for that. So this was more about us like writing the thing and then figuring it out. Like I did change some stuff so it did fit into things that we could do, but then I also like added a huge massive piece that we didn't have and I had to figure out, which was like this rotating stage that we ended up using, and like that was not even in the original script. And I was like, what if we shot on this? And I go find it, and like I talked them into letting us use it, which was wonderful. So let me just say, as giving advice to filmmakers, you should do what you just said and not what we did, because what we did was really painful.
It's going to be hard either way, right? Even if you write exactly what you know, it's still going to be a scramble to get it.
Yeah, but I think also, like, look, if you have like a coffee shop you can use, like write something for that coffee shop, not like build a coffee shop, which is what we ended up having to do.
I apologize for being 6 years too late for you guys. If I had just kept Jump Cut for 6 more years.
Think we didn't think about that.
We needed that
100 times.
And I was trying, and I almost got Chelsea another place, but that was too hard too, so I feel bad.
We talked about that so much because what people who are listening who might not realize is that yes, so one segment takes place entirely in a coffee shop. And I reached out to, obviously you can't shoot like places like Starbucks and, Coffee Bean and stuff. They're never going to let you, corporate places aren't going to let you necessarily shoot there. But I was talking to these mom and pop shops, but the thing was we couldn't afford to close it, which means, like Brea said, we would have had to, go in when they close, set everything, leave before they open, reset everything every night. And this was a 5-night shoot. And and we would have had to shoot nights. We would have had to be true nights. And some coffee shops close at 8 and open at 7. So that's like not even enough. It just wasn't possible to have something that wasn't closed. And we just, like Brea said, we built one. We built it in the stage. And that, I don't know how we could shoot day for night. And I don't know how we could have done it any other way at this point. I think that worked out as it should. And also I wanted to piggyback on what you had talked about, Elric, in terms of like, I do think we thought a lot about when we were casting. I know we thought about, okay, let's try to check all the boxes of like, what do companies that primarily want to do horror, what kind of cast do they like? How do we think more outside the box? Like, I think Brea and I both love casting people who have worked in comedy and horror because there's just so hand in hand genres and they complement each other so well. And so thinking about that, because that also opens you up to other companies. So I think it's thinking outside the box in terms of casting and companies that could be interested in it, using, because you don't know when you don't have that at first. You have to think about, okay, looking forward in time, what are people going to be into? Let's think about how our cast can reflect that and give us kind of a broad picture of places that would want the movie.
Yeah, which I think is like, again, so helpful to have a creative producer on board who knows about directing as well as Ed. So like between the three of us, I feel like we were able to come up with like creative solutions for a lot of stuff. Like I even like what we were shooting all night the last night, which was like so brutal. And all of us were there, plus Rebekah. So like at one point I was like, is this even working? And like I went up to Bekah and Chelsea and I was like, does this look right? Like, and I was like, we watched this footage and like we had to watch it back. And I was like, they're like, it looks fine. You're great. It's fine to do, because I had to use like a different idea. We had to change something last minute. So it's just helpful to have like these extra creative people on, because I've been on a lot of projects with people. This is going to sound so mean, but who think they're creative and they're not. And they don't problem solve creatively, and they don't, like, you're like, oh, we can't afford this huge actor, and they like can't understand that, and they want to put someone who doesn't make sense for horror in there. So it's like having like people who know horror, who are creative, like on board, like behind you, like it made all the difference in trying to make a small movie in LA.
So with all this in mind, like what advice would you give to people who are like, I just want to make something. I just want to make my first thing. Like what, like I come from the rigid side where I'm like, your first step's opening the LLC, which is the really lame thing. But that's what I did for Elric. Sure. When Elric was like, he kept saying like, I just want to shoot a film. I just want to shoot a film. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to open the LLC for you. And I literally presented him one day with all the paperwork. And I was like, you now owe taxes on it, sir. So you better go make it. And that was
$800 a year. $800 a year.
$800 a year.
She gave you an $800 debt.
Thanks, Bekah.
You're welcome. My name's on it too.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, like, so with that creatively, like what is the first step that you think you should take?
Surround yourself with great people.
Say, is Chelsea available? I don't know.
I am producing. So if anyone wants me to produce something, surround yourself with great people. Surround yourself with people that believe in you, believe in your project, will support you emotionally. I'm not talking like financially with the movie, but find people who will support you emotionally, be there for you, and creatively. And make sure you're in sync as to what the vision is of the project. But that's the best thing you can do, is surround yourself with your creative team. So you're all on the same page. You're all, that everyone's expectations are the same, that someone's not coming in thinking, you can have your great high expectations, but also come into it. We're not making a $5 million movie. We're making a $500K movie. And so keeping those expectations sort of grounded and realistic. It's like, okay, well, we can't cast Jennifer Lawrence, so let's think more about what makes sense here, things like that. But also, still having those expectations of achieving what you want and being able to get it in sort of a more creative, outside the box way. And I think things coming from a place of working for very small budgets, I think there's magic that can come out of that. And there's the creative parameters that you do have. A lot of fun things can come out of that. So I think that's something worth exploring too. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, set a date. I think it does help. Set a date.
I'll set a date for you.
It's shocking. Like, and even like, the date's probably going to move a little bit, but like set a date and say, I'm going to shoot this on this date, and I'm going to do it with the amount of money that I have, and like, or the amount of money I can get by that date. Don't like go in to rip people off or anything, but like go in with like that's your plan, and you're going to shoot on that date. I do think that kind of stuff helps, because I think otherwise you can say like, I want to do it. Like, and there's a lot of things I want to do, but if you don't set a goal, it's kind of hard to get done. Yeah.
That's what I always did with the short films, because the short films I found to be super scary when I started, as I'm sure you guys did as well. Like that first one, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I didn't. It was that, like I have no idea how to do this, but I'm just doing it. And as soon as I set a date and told people to be there, it was like, well, now I have to do it, because I told everybody they have to be there. And it just got, it was that date. It was that it's impending, and now I have to have my shit together for it. So,
I felt that way I felt that way about casting an actor. I was like, if I get the actor I really want and I did. Like, I got the person I wanted most, like, in the world, right? I could have, out of anyone in the world, somehow on a very small movie got this person, and from that moment you're like, well, I can't let them down. Like, this is it stopped being about me and it starts being about other people, and that actually helps you get out of your head and just create your own momentum a bit.
And did you obviously you already had a script. Did you have a casting director, or did you just go out to the actor?
We did. In the case of her, it was like I was finding other ways initially to discover her, but I did need the casting director to get it to her through agents. But yeah, I did. I used David Guglielmo, who's probably done a few people's films in our world. And again, people who think outside the box can be really handy, because I actually love casting, and I pay a lot of attention. Bekah always talks to me whenever she casting, and I'm always like, oh, I've got this person. Yeah, no, I get really excited about keeping track of who people are and just thinking about what they could do. And that takes you so far. But like, when you have somebody who really knows how to like give you a tape and hide all the other tapes from you. Like, some of my favorite moments was like, for one of our characters, one of the lead characters, we only looked at one person because he sent me this tape and said, just trust me, I have a feeling about this. And after I saw it, I was like, I don't want to see anything, because that felt so right. So I think there's something really cool to that if you can afford it. Again, on the budget, I probably couldn't actually afford a casting director, but it was the first thing maybe that was the other way of getting started too. Like, oh, I've paid this person money, better make the movie now. So.
And they are kind of worth their weight.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, between like dealing with like the agents and the reps and the stuff that Chelsea and I didn't have to do because we had a casting director, like the paperwork of SAG, all the SAG paperwork. I mean, we had to deal with SAG obviously, but like that was like, there was like a lot that the casting director did.
I talked to reps. I talked to a couple of reps.
That's true. But they are kind of great at like having just another person to like having good people to bounce ideas off of is kind of just creating a community. I was actually just talking to someone on the phone today, and he was like, he lives in New York, and he's like, do you think there's like a horror community here, or like as big as the one in LA? And I was like, I think there is, but I don't know, because I haven't lived there. And he was like, it just seems like y'all have a really great community. And I was like, we do actually. Like, it is like kind of wild how many people we could just call. And like, I think we have a really nice, and everyone's nice. It's a nice group of people.
I'm just going to echo that for a sec, because we're shooting something for Fangoria right now. And I had 3 of my students come PA on the set today, and they had PA'd on other projects around LA, TV shows and stuff. And they all left going, everybody was so great today. What was it? And I was like, it's horror people. I swear. Like, other stuff I've been on, TV shows that I worked on, it's always like this very intense competitive vibe. And then I roll onto horror sets, and it's just like a friendship and a kinship of everybody just excited to make something. But I wanted to echo that is one of the things I will always splurge for. Like, even if I am funding it with my own money, a casting director, because, and I have my students use it for their thesis projects as well, because you can find ones that will work with you for a couple $100. You want to pay them more, but you can find ones that will work for you, or will come in and produce the film with you and have some stake in it. And you can always find a way. But when I write, and even when I write comic books or novels, I write with one actor in mind. There is one actor in my head who is playing that entire thing. And as soon as they say no, my brain dissolves. And I'm immediately like, well, who else are you thinking? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't even think past that person. Like, it's like a roadblock in having that. That's why I'm always texting Elric, because I was like, we got to know from blank, and I don't even know what I'm doing now. And then he'll respond back with like 20 people. And I'm like, okay, fine. I can picture this person.
The alternate version of Glorious. That was my Jim Cummings pitch. I was like, Jim Cummings, nice. Glorious. He's in his underwear. How fun is that?
Would have been good.
Great.
But, I think you cast
things
right
work out as they meant to work out. Yeah.
I do keep a running spreadsheet after I watch a show, and like things of people I really like and want to work with. And that spreadsheet has people that I've worked with before that I'm like, oh, this person ruled. Like, I want to hire them again, of like both cast and crew. And I think that is helpful, because when it comes to this stuff, I also start to blank, where I'm like, I've never seen a movie. What's a movie? Like, I like can't remember anyone. And I go look at my spreadsheet and I'm like, oh my God, I have always wanted to work with like whatever this actor is. And like, let's make them an offer.
Yeah. I'd second the spreadsheet, of course. But even like TV shows I'm watching, an actor who was a kid in a movie 5 years ago is now a teenager or in their 20s for stuff I'm casting, if I need someone in that age range. So it's a good reference. And also, like, this is something that we ended up casting someone in this movie. I can't go into the specifics, but there are multiple people who have auditioned for me for my first movie. And primarily my first movie, because my second movie were just almost all offers. But in my first movie, I became friends with some of the actors that auditioned for me but didn't get the part, as strange as that is. So again, if you hold auditions for something, keep a list of the people you liked, but maybe because you can't cast everybody, keep a list, keep in touch with them if you're able to, because I literally just called this person up because we stayed in touch since 2017, and now their career is obviously like taking off like crazy. And I just called and said, hey, there's a part in this movie we think you would be great for. And he just is like, yeah, send it to me. And in 24 hours said, I want to make it, and was the first person we cast.
Literally.
So when I am a full big time supporter of casting directors, but also if you know somebody and can talk to them directly, that's great too. But know them, don't just like cold reach out necessarily. But that was just happened to work out that way. But yeah, casting directors, like you were saying, Bekah, I will be casting somebody. I was like, actors in their 20s. I don't know any. I can't think of it.
I'm done. I can't think of a single person.
What's the movie? Have I seen a TV show? Are people in TV shows? How does it? So that's why it's so helpful. And sometimes I'll just say like, hey, I need a list of, great actors that are maybe not as well known in their 20s. And I'll get a list of like 30 people. Oh yeah, I know this person. Oh my gosh, I know this person too. Oh, this is great. So sometimes you just need the extra help. And then you just have that list at your disposal for other projects in the future.
And your friends your friends have lists too. So like call them up. Cause that's always helpful. Like Chelsea knowing that like this guy, but like I also have lists from like my Blumhouse movies. So I'm like, oh, I know a lot of women in their 20s now because I watched their tapes, and like I know who's offer only and who's whatever. Like, I mean, that kind of stuff is like super helpful the more you make movies. The other thing I'll say, like the way to get started is I do think you have to decide the story you want to tell and why you want to tell it. And like that's something I think if you can always come back to like, well, this is the story I'm trying to tell and why, it does make it easier to get going. Because if you're just like, I think I want to do a fucking horror movie, like, yes, so does everyone else. Like, why is this the horror movie that is your horror movie? I think that is something important to think about.
And doubling down on that, like the warning that you will be with this, even if as an anthology, you will be with this for years. Like I'm going on, I just showed it for the first time and it's going on year 3. 2 years since I shot it. And so you have to make sure it's an idea or a theme that actually means something and can stay relevant to you, because otherwise you're going to hate your movie. And that's the worst thing that could happen, I think. So
Especially, I think you can hate your movie sometimes.
Hey, no, someday. Sure.
That's fine.
Especially if you're doing it yourself, because like with Creatures, where it was us scraping together the cash, us, piecemealing everything together, 18 months from when we started to when we actually finished it and started submitting it to festivals, because it was very much like, well, we need color. Well, we're like $4,000 short. Okay, guys, I'll get that by next month. Hold on. Yeah. And it was because there was like 6 of us who were kind of, contributing. And it was very much like when we could, or when we could find somebody who was willing to do our post sound for, the couple thousand that we had to spend, or this person's finally free off this TV show and is willing to do my effects for a pittance. So it was so long. And then, but to finally get it was worth every single bit of it. So.
And the point is it worked. I mean, I think that's the thing that it's a scary step to like self-fund the way you guys were with, say, that anthology or what you guys are doing. But that anthology led to you getting other movies made in your life. It kickstarts things. So the self DIY model is for a reason. It's either between projects because you want to improve yourself, like you're saying, Brea, or to get the ball rolling, that might never come your way otherwise. So, and it really does work for people.
Yeah, and I always look back and say it was completely worth it. It was worth like all the parties I didn't go to, all the nights I didn't go drinking, all of the movies I stayed home from to work on this thing. Like it was worth every bit of it. So, but I want to know unexpected hurdles, and this is for all of us. Like, what is the one thing that you're like, wasn't expecting that to be quite as difficult as it was, that you can give us like word of warning for people?
How much time do we have?
Chelsea, I saw her eyes shift back and forth. It was like, that was beautiful. That was perfect comic timing too.
You have to, this is something I learned from years of being an assistant, but you have to figure out how to predict the unpredictable. So I think the hardest things, like losing the locations, were hard, but luckily we had done so much in prep where we were able to pivot, or just, again, because we were shooting somewhere that we knew, it's like, okay, we can't shoot in Griffith. What are the parks that I know I have shot in or I know aren't that expensive to shoot? Okay, let's pivot. Same thing with, we lost this government building. Okay, what are other, like, oh yeah, Brea looked at this place. All right, let's give him a call. So I think those were some challenges that we didn't, we're tough. We're tough to pivot, and just the everything is more expensive than you think it's going to be, and to be prepared for that. And yeah, those are things that come to mind right away. There's other things, but those are the ones that are the standouts. And also, you know what, whether your movie is union or non-union, treat it like it's a union movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something where now I'm just giving advice. This isn't like hurdles necessarily. Those weren't hurt. We were very lucky with our casting crew. Special effects are going to take longer than you think sometimes.
We can't even talk about it. It's too stressful.
That just make sure your timelines are as tight as you think. Like, just really double check those timelines, because that can be stressful. VFX take a ton of time when you're on set. So these are just things that to prepare yourself for, that are things that they just took time. They just took time when we were on set. We had wonderful VFX and special effects people, but in terms of planning for time, also have an AD that's on top of it. So to really keep the train moving, which, like, again, we were so lucky, but these are just things that help keep things moving. But yeah, time's a big thing. You want to be on, you don't want to keep your cast there, or excuse me, your cast and crew for 20 hours. You have to be mindful of that stuff. So those come to mind. Brea. Elric.
I mean, I think those are good. I would say it's funny, I had a conversation with Molly Elfman before, because she did the what are they called, bite-sized horror?
Yep, the bite-sized horror. All those with Zeke.
And we talked about that, and she was like, if you can, like, she kind of was like, don't shoot them all in a row, and like, if you can use one location for multiple things, like, do that and whatever. And like, I took almost none of that advice and I regret it, because I was like, man, if we had like shot one and then just taken like a week off in between to like regroup, we probably, you always are like, no, we got to get it done right away, which helps in a lot of ways because the momentum is going. But I think there were things that like we could have caught. And like, I will say, like, there was one day that we just like, it was my first day of shooting, and we had to use the same location. So we were coming off of some people had already been working 5 or 6 days in a row. And then I was trying to switch crews over, but there's a couple crew members that like had to come back the next day. Not that many. And like, they were aware, but that day was supposed to end at 9 p.m. and it went to like 3 a.m. And then I started at like 8 a.m. or something. And it was wow. And it was even, and like my AD showed up, and I looked at him and I was like, oh my God. Cause he like, his eyes were like red rimmed. And I was like, do I send you home? But like, the nice thing about being in LA is that I was able to call someone. Started calling people the night before, and I was like, can you come to set tomorrow for like 4 hours in the morning so Chelsea can sleep like 3 hours? Like, she needs to sleep like more than an hour. She needs to go to bed at some point. And it was just this thing where we were losing the location, and we just had not like backed ourselves into it. It was like, it was the only way to do it, but it was an unexpected hurdle that we didn't know the night was going to go so long the night before. There was like a lot of things that we couldn't have predicted. And fortunately we got through it, but like, thank God I was able to like just call people and just be like, can you just show up? And certain people, I was just like, I've done it enough that I was like, I don't need this person here. I can do this without this person. But definitely, like, I've never gone into a shoot like with so little sleep and so much stress. But it was fine at the end of the day, and we got through it. And like, bless Todd, who was our AD that day, who Chelsea and I love
you, Todd.
He like really pulled through that day, even though I almost sent him home because I was just like, I can't have you here. But yeah, so unexpected hurdles are just like, your days are not what you think they're going to be always. And like that day where I was like, great, everyone will get enough sleep. Yes, it'll be like a long day, but like whatever.
How quickly it fell apart
so quickly. It was a rough one.
But it worked. You know what? That's the thing, is like, I remember talking to some of those crew members. I think I talked to them like 7 times the night before to be like, listen, if you're not okay with coming in, it'll be your 6th day. Like you'll get paid the 6th day. Like if that's an issue. And I've worked, and my second movie was 6-day weeks. Like we only had 1 day off.
Too. Yeah, same.
But this movie, this movie and my first movie were 5-day weeks. So that's what we were trying to stick to. But yeah, Brea's first day was a 6th day for some. It was crazy. We were turning over crew. It was
and luckily we did switch like crews on this. Like we didn't switch completely every time, but we switched a lot of people, which was very helpful going into it. Man, 5-day weeks are the way to go though.
5-day weeks, I absolutely love, especially if you're shooting in Canada where they only have 10-hour work days. I could do that indefinitely. Then I roll here and it's like 12-hour days, 6-day weeks. You get 1 day off. Like I barely can sleep it off.
I know. And you can't. I mean, 10-hour days are really that is the jam. Like I loved during COVID, the Blumhouse movie we shot because of COVID, we shot like brunch hours, right? Where you don't take a lunch, which was great. Like you take a lunch,
like a rotating lunch schedule where
it worked out great. I would love to do it. It's just, I think it's expensive. So people can't do it. But if I had all the money in the world, I would do 10-hour days, 5-day weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, I think people don't.
Unexpected hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, people until you make something, they don't realize that like filmmaking is a time-based medium. Film is a time-based medium. We already knew that because it takes place over 90 minutes or 2 hours. But what people don't realize is just also the making of it is everything is about time. And so when the keywords that Chelsea was saying, like pivot being one that I think if the director has the ability to pivot, like my number one advice and the one thing I learned about myself that I was proud of was the ability before the problem happens to see it coming and then like be willing to go, oh, these next 3 pages are going to be cut from the script by somebody because we've lost too much time. So I have to come up with a creative, I could do that in one shot. And if you're able to do that, you will have a movie. You're always going to make sacrifices along the way. But if you wait till somebody takes it away from you, you will probably have a bad movie. And I think that's the difference. I think directors have to be able to pivot and they have to be aware of time. Even if they have a great AD, they have to be themselves aware of how this is going, because the hardest thing, if there was something I regret at times, is like, when you schedule out your shoot, you don't sometimes give more time to things that are more important. You kind of treat it equally. And now I look back, when I watch the movie, there'll be a couple parts where I'm like, I needed 5 more hours there, but I didn't get it because it was equally shot with everything else. And so when you could look back, you go, next time I would prioritize key moments like climaxes or something, anything like that. Yeah. Because otherwise you can't get that time back. It's just gone.
That's something that I actually wish I would have pushed for more earlier in the shoot. Because it's sort of like figuring out, Brea and I talked about this, is like for the last day of the shoot, which was the last night of her shoot, is like when we were talking about shooting it, be like, there was the hero moment, Bekah knows too, this portion. And I was like, shoot that first. Because let's make sure we have the hero moment that we need in this segment. I think each segment sort of has this like big set piece in each one. And that was something where it's like, I stayed on top of it as much as I could, but like making sure those moments, you have those and you do have the time you need for those. There's always other factors. Again, like I said, there could be special effects, there could be VFX, there could be this, there could be techno crane issues, there could be whatever it is. But to make sure, like you said, to give those moments the time they need where you can, even in these tight shoots, to really try to get that, I think is important, and making sure you have enough time for that. Yeah. Totally. I think that's great.
I don't know if this is just like advice for directors now, but that's
okay. It's a special episode.
Okay, great. It's a very special episode.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like how to make an indie film episode. So
I learned a valuable lesson on a show that I won't say, but it was a really hard show to direct on. And the one thing I learned is that I made a rule for myself that I always know if I only have one setup in the scene, like what is it? What is the setup that actually tells the story? Yeah. Like, and it's not necessarily the wide, like if there is something that like, this is actually the story and I can distill it down. And I do that before I go in every day. I look at my shot list and I say, this is the most important thing, that if I don't get this, if they're like, you have 10 minutes to shoot this whole scene, I'll be like, great, I know exactly what to do. Like, I try not to leave that shit up to chance, because I feel like I just don't have like the background. The other thing I will say is that have a team that fucking fights for you. And I should have said this the first. That's what you do need, because at one point we were like, wow, we don't have much money. And they're like, we should cut the rotating room. And Chelsea said, we're not cutting the rotating room. And I was like, because I was like, at one point we were like, maybe we will. And I got this, and I looked at Ed and I was so mad at everyone, because I was just like, we're going to cut like the one thing I wanted to do. Like, this is why I want to make this, which is not true, but it is what it's became the thing that I was holding on to. And it's nice to have someone to back you up to go, we're not cutting it. And I was like, great, thank God.
There was no conversation. I was like, no, it's the end. We're not cutting it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Because you know, months down the line, when that's on a screen, that's going to be the moment that everyone's talking about. And if somebody doesn't fight for it, why are we making movies, right? Without
the
those
production
moments, you know?
Yeah. Production value is so important. Like, it's cool if you can have a really great talky, you know, horror film, but if you do not have that impressive moment, like that, it adds it. So my hurdle that shocks me with every movie, I can't say it's even just the ones that I've done myself, it's every film, is how fucking long post takes. It's always like, you get to this point and you're like, I have finished my movie, it's amazing, and then 5 months later I'm still like, wait, we have to do what? Wait, hold on, I have to approve what? And it's like, it just, and I know Elric's been in the thick of this, which is what reminded me of
deliverables.
Yeah.
A minute now, I hate it.
Yeah, like you spend, you know, it's all about getting to that finish line of shooting, and then 6 weeks of editing, maybe more. And I'm like, okay, I got this. I know it's, and then after that, you're talking another like 2 months or longer of color and ADR and post sound and leveling and Foley. And it's just like, it never ends. And then it's all about credits and titles and graphics. And I'm like, I just want my fucking movie to come out. And like 8 months later, I'm like, it's never coming. It just lives in post now. It's on some guy's computer and he's just playing with our credit sequence. And that's it. So yeah.
That's so true. At some point you're like approving the closed captioning. You're like, I cannot believe I'm still like working on this movie. And that's when I hate the movie. I hate the movie in post. In post, I'm always like, fuck this movie. Like, no, I'll never do this again.
I will have those moments in post where I start really questioning if I even like what I did, because I've been staring at it for a year at that point. I know Elric just went through all of this. So yeah, where you're just like, I don't even know what this is anymore. Like, it stops making sense because you're just so focused on like the credit sequence and things like that. Like, it's just, you lose that focus, and then it comes back as soon as it gets out there into the world. But yeah, it's always that moment of like, I never get to show this to anybody. It's weird.
It's also the thing, I think while you're shooting, it's physically exhausting, because it's like, I'm tired and old. I'm tired when I'm not shooting. Like, I cannot believe I have to stay up all night and like shoot and be on my feet, and like, it's exhausting. But post is mentally exhausting in a way where it's just like the same repetition over and over again, and like trying to find objectivity along the way is like, it's exhausting. But it's a mental battle at that point.
Yes.
Oh, can I ask, but because I don't want to miss out on this, you guys did something that I don't think I had ever seen done before. It was kind of like, almost like a version of live journaling while you're making a movie, which seems wild, but of podcasting. So talk about how this came about, and also like when you guys opened for like food donations, it opened not just that it's helpful for you guys, but also that it makes people feel like they're part of it. And I thought that was talk to both of those. It was cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like twofold. One, it's been something I've kind of wanted to do for a while, is like kind of documenting the process as it goes. By the way, we have not done a post wrap up yet, because I told Ed I was too traumatized and I have to wait. I have to wait until I can like actually process. But we are doing it, I think, this week. It's called, I'm going to plug the podcast. It's called Anthology, where we talk about the making of the movie. We also are kind of like reviewing anthologies for like one-off episodes, and then we're talking to people who've made anthologies before. So it's kind of like a 3-parter, but the last few weeks have been all of us like interviewing various actors, people on set, just kind of doing the behind the scenes of like what's going on. So in part, it was something I've always wanted to do, sort of like document it, because I do think talking to indie filmmakers about indie filmmaking is like hard, and it's hard to explain what you're doing. And I think there's something interesting about documenting that process as it goes. We're also documenting the process of our short going around to festivals and like what that feels like. Our first episode was all at Overlook, and it was us talking about going in and like how nervous we were, and then talking about afterwards. And we're like, did people laugh enough? Was it good? So it was like the actual, as true to life as we can be, you know, without giving away our social security numbers or whatever. And then we also were like, oh, everyone always goes like, you're making an indie, can I help in some way? And I'm always like, can you show up and work on set? No one wants to show up and work 12 hours except Rebekah McKendry.
I'll be there.
I know she's there. Call for Rebekah. She'll bring her camper and her husband. But I was like, well, what if I made, because I do another podcast, a book podcast, and people send us stuff all the time from our wish list. And I was like, what if I made a wish list of an Amazon wish list, and like people can send us stuff, like a pack of LaCroix costs $3, for like $3.95 or something like that. And so Chelsea and I made this list. We started sending it out to people, and I would say 80% of our crafty was covered. And we had a big crew and a big cast.
Yeah.
We were big. I mean, even the day you were there, Bekah, that was like not our full size. Like we had like 30 crew at some point and like 6 cast some days. Like, so it was almost 40 fucking people. Wow. So we went through a lot of food. And it was fun because we got to add stuff, and then people would send it and they'd be like, hey, I sent you the Reese's. And like, it was just kind of a fun way for our friends to kind of keep in touch with us. And also, and this is so self-serving, and I hate to say it out loud, but I do think when people feel like they're a part of something, they want to know what happens to it. And my first movie I made back in 2013, we had people who helped kickstart it, and those people supported the movie to the end. When it came out, they rented it, even they like kickstarted it, and they still follow the stuff that I do, and they still help me out. Like, and it's like we cultivate these people who have been our friends and our fans and whatever for so long, and like they want to help in the same way I want to help my friends, and I want to help people I'm a fan of. Like, if Samantha Irby was like, hey, I started a fucking Amazon wish list, I'd be like, send, like people that I'm a fan of. That was a random example of a woman who writes memoirs, but like I mean, like there are people I just have loved for like a long time, and I'm like, why would I? It just felt like a way for me to get people involved now, because when you're putting out an indie movie, it's fucking hard. And like, maybe at that point they'll be like, oh, I helped out this indie movie. Like, let me see what it's about.
Yeah. I'll never not do an Amazon wish list if I'm doing an indie movie like that. And also we had things like a coffee pot, because we can't afford to do a Starbucks run every day. We just can't do that. And so things like that. And we got
just like what do you call, like stingers, like cords, like shit, like that.
Cords.
Cords. Like shit that we're like, we do need this. And like people would send us like practical stuff like that, but also like fun stuff. Like we got so many Lara bars, which is what I ate every single night on set.
I think I did 3 crafty runs the whole time. And again, you don't realize how much people eat and drink on set. Like it's wild, because it keeps you awake. And so we're like, okay, let's have healthy stuff. But then also, okay, halfway through, I brought out some of the junk food, because I knew people were like
potato
craving
chips
that.
The whole time I was on the set, it was like Ruffles my whole time.
Yep, potato chips. And then people. But the other thing was, then crew caught on to what was happening. They're like, can you add this to the list? Can you add that to the list? And so that was great. And everyone, you want to make everybody happy. It's also worth, there's a couple of places that we, or friends of ours, us or friends, reached out to for donations. So I reached out, Brea loves the Q Chocolate Company and Unreal, and we reached out to them, and they sent stuff for free. So they sent like coupons, they sent boxes of chocolate. Like, if there's a company you like that's maybe not a huge corporate place, it's worth reaching out to be like, hey, I'm making a film. Would you donate some of your goods to our shoot? You'd be surprised. Like, I've done that before on other shoots, and people have Liquid Death has done that for a lot of shoots. And
the Creatures was sponsored by Topo Chico.
There you go. Topo Chico's done it.
Because Joe Wicker and I were such huge fans of it, and Joe reached out and was like, can we get some? And they delivered, I can only describe it as a pallet. Like, we had so much Topo Chico, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it's worth that. You never know. They can say no, but you never know who says yes. And I always had my like private chocolate stash for Brea.
Yeah. When I get through a scene, she would be like, "Here you go," like having me a little piece of chocolate, which was great. But I think there is like a certain amount of like, there's an interesting thing about, we can't be transparent in all of the things that we do because there are legal ramifications for a lot of things, and like, so being able to like ask people for things and they get to see those things on the set or talk about what we're doing, that kind of felt interesting to me. It is an experiment. I have no idea if it will go awry. Us doing this podcast about the making of this, like, I have no idea, but I find it, I think like, we'll see how all this goes. I don't know if people are still sending us Amazon stuff. Are they, Chelsea?
I don't.
Our wish list is still up.
It's still up, but I think it's finally like the last day was the last day I got stuff. Like that's I brought everything that was left on the last day of shooting. And also everyone who donated gets a special thanks in the movie. And I had people reach out to me who were donating saying, if I get a special thanks, does that mean my name gets to be on IMDb?
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And I was like,
Aww.
yes, it does. And they're like, oh my God, that is so cool. I will send you 10 more things.
But I wanted to say on IMDb, I wanted to say Elric gave the pop chips. It has to be really specific.
You know? Pop chips. Those says a day. Those
I was dried mango. So yeah.
Oh, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Healthy.
Yeah, healthy.
That was gone. All those things were gone so fast. People love those.
It's a good final thought there, what you guys are saying. Like, I love you're inviting people in, but also like that one of the hardest things when you're first starting is asking for help, reaching out, saying, I can't do this alone. I think for me, it took an extra 10 years because I wasn't willing to like say, oh, I do need other people to do this. Like, I don't want to ask anyone for money, those kind of things that you get in your head. But as soon as you do it, and if you go as far as you guys are going, as in like, no, we really want everyone involved to help, I think it changes your mindset and your whole approach completely flips, which is really good.
Well, you're going to ask for their help anyway. They're going to have to rent the movie. They're going to have to rent the movie. They're going to have to watch the movie. They're going to have to support it at festivals and like, oh, wow, what if it goes to theaters? They have to support it there. So you're already asking these people for help in some way, shape, or form. So from like starting now, I mean, again, like my first movie, the only reason I was able to make it is because I did a Kickstarter really early for Kickstarter. And like, I just learned such a valuable lesson on like, just like go ahead and ask because people actually are kind of willing to help out.
Yeah.
And Elric, I have vivid memories of us sitting in Chattanooga having tacos and you telling me that you really wanted to make your movie and you had the script and everything, but you were really nervous about asking for money. And I remember specifically saying it's the most uncomfortable part, but you got to get uncomfortable to get comfortable later. And that it's the sucky part, but honestly, it's the hardest part. And it's that like eat the frog thing. Like you're going to ask some people to help. You're going to ask some people for money. If you're piecemealing a film together, you're going to ask 10 people to put in like, $1,000 or however much you need. But then after that, then you get to make your baby. And then it's suddenly like, oh, well, that sucked, but it wasn't that hard.
No,
people are willing to help.
It was hugely impactful, but also like, I think I took it further and I remember going, oh, find the person you're most embarrassed and ashamed to ask, which in my case was my uncle, not because he wouldn't do it, but just that there's some sort of a block we're raised with. And I asked that person first. And that person was like, that person wrote back like, of course, here's the check. And I was like, oh, after that, it was easy because that was the personal hang up you have in your head for whatever reason. And so like, that absolutely was the right advice. So thanks, Bekah.
Yeah. Mine was my parents. It was like, I could easily ask that wealthy dentist I went to college with who I thought might give me, $1,000, but asking my parents to put in was like a really big one. But I did that pretty at the start. And then after that, like asking that guy I went to college with that I thought would, find it fun to come to a film premiere, it got easier. So yeah, it gets
easier as you get desperate too. Like once you're about to film, that was easy. I was like, ask anyone.
Right.
So. And then you get to color and you're like, we need another $3,000 and I don't have anybody else to ask. So we're going to have to wait till I wrap up this other project, y'all, so we can keep going. And that's indie filmmaking. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight to kind of dig in. This is exactly what I wanted it to be, which is honestly insider baseball, but I wanted it to be that like for the people who just want to make something, who just want to get something off the ground, the advice that I would give my students, that any of us would give kind of the people that we work with on how to get something going and the hurdles you're going to find along the way. So with that in mind, I know you guys are entering into that 6 to 8 months of post I was describing, where it just goes on forever and ever. And then there's deliverables, but do we have kind of an end game, of we're hoping to have it ready for nothing. That is
Here's the thing. Like I think I've had such like hard deadlines. It's kind of nice to not have a hard deadline. Like obviously we want to do some cool festival. That'd be fun. Have a festival premiere, but we're not trying to like, my goal would be like a year from now being in the festival circuit. Yeah. But that's nothing hard and fast.
Wait, on that, I kind of missed the short that is touring right now. Is that going to be part of the anthology? So it will be
First segment.
Okay, cool. So people seeing that are getting a taste.
It just played Etheria and won.
Oh, congrats.
Oh, shit.
It's called MLM. I think it's not up. Is it up? It may still be up on Shudder right now.
Oh, I think they're up I think they're up now.
Yeah,
don't
the
know what
Etheria
it is.
shorts usually head there. So that's
It's been
awesome.
there. I don't know if it's still there is the question. But so people, it's playing Fright Fest. If people are going to be at Fright Fest, it's playing that.
Okay, Elric's film will be, and he will as well. Are you going to Fright Fest, Brea?
I am not.
Ed is, because I saw him post, and I don't know Ed, but I wrote saying, I will see you there.
Oh, great. You
So,
should catch up with
I'll
him.
meet him,
Yeah, I've had a couple shorts play Fright Fest, and I'm always like super honored, but I've never made it over. So Elric, prep us. Yeah.
I went 2 years ago. Torn Hearts wasn't allowed to do American festivals, but we were allowed to do that festival.
Nice.
And I had the greatest time. I wish I was going, but I just made an indie movie, so I cannot cannot do that.
It's always the price of it. Like,
yeah.
I played a couple stages a few times as well, and I've never been, and it's always just like, oh man, that's awesome. I want to go some point. I'll get there, but you're always coming off that film, and then you're like, I gotta save a bit more back up for the next one that I can blow all my money on. Excellent. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And thank you. I hope that this was beneficial to anybody at home who was thinking about not even just making a film, but doing something big creative. I think that a lot of these same kind of just, you got to get started, set that date applies for books or anything else that you're thinking of doing. So Elric, you are heading to Fright Fest, correct?
Yeah. And I won't be on our next episode. So you're going solo for the first time in a while.
Yes, and which I'm pretty excited about. I got a cool concept planned. We'll see how it plays out this week, but I'm pretty excited about it. So if you happen to be in the UK, you can check out Dead Thing at Fright Fest. You can also check out MLM playing at Fright Fest. And otherwise, we will be back in 2 weeks with a really fun show. Basically, this came about because somebody on Twitter dared me to do it. And so since Elric's out, I'm like, well, fuck yeah, we're going to do it. So yeah, it's going to be
She's
fun.
Gonna get more heady without me. So that's fine.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
The Colors of the Dark podcast is a Fangoria production. Producers and co-hosts are Rebekah, McKendry, and Elric Kane. Executive producers are Tara Ainsley and Abby Gould. Sonic branding by Michael Rodriguez. And, of course, our amazing sound engineer, Ernie Hurtado.